Okay. So we're talking with St. Louis, East St. Louis's own Phil Perry, the man with the voice that just made babies. That's all I can say. Okay. Formerly of the Monclairs, and then went on doing his own thing. And this is part two of that interview. You were listening to G.Wiz, the time traveler, as we're traveling at the speed of sound on 881 KDHX. Mr. Phil Perry.
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is what I want to know. When and how did your group, the Monclairs, form?
In junior high school,
Junior
we
high school?
we started getting together and learning harmonies and picking songs to do at talent shows and stuff like that. And we replaced a couple of the original members who decided to go to college. When people ask me what college did I graduate from, I jokingly tell them the University of Monclairs.
It sounds good. Montclair University. Okay. What was it? Because I know you recorded in Oliver Sane's studio.
Yeah.
So how was it working with the great Oliver Sane, the man with the golden horn?
It was my tutorage into the recording side of the industry. We would get into the studio when Oliver had a day or a night off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And I would come in and I would have most of I never wrote it down. I never made charts or cheat sheets even.
Mm-hmm.
I never wrote it down because I didn't want the individuals that were making the music with me
Mm-hmm.
to be paying more attention to reading the music than they were about making the music.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I remember when this was while we were still recording the rest of the Dreamin' Out of Season album.
Wow.
And I went into the control room to just to listen to what I had done. Mm-hmm. And Oliver was looking at me with, as he's been known to do, with his chin on his hand. And he was kind of shaking his head no. I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "You really hear all that stuff at one time, don't you?" I said, "Yeah, don't you?" He said, "Not at one time." He said, "Pick and choose. What I already know, whatever it is you're going to choose, it's still going to be too much.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I can find a place for it in the speakers." That's the Oliver Sane I knew. And he always asked me, "Why you always got so much going on?" I said, "It's just the way I'm just trying to make the sounds that I hear in between my ears when no music is playing. I'm just trying to continue the link up of the creative process."
Mm-hmm.
But it starts between my ears. And when it starts, nobody hears it but me.
So that makes you pretty much a writer, composer, producer, all rolled up into one.
The Monclairs had 5 singles that were number 1 in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
Of the 5 singles, I wrote 4 of them.
Mm.
The one that I didn't write, I arranged. But at the time, I was the only one that was really going to do that.
So
what can I say? It's the East Boogie in me.
It's that Mississippi River water, right?
That's it. And that catfish.
As Muddy Waters would say, right? Muddy water.
Yeah, I mean, now, I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea. I have learned to really enjoy fish and crustacean from the Pacific. Mm-hmm. But I've never lost my taste for muddy catfish.
He went Mississippi deep on you on that one.
Yeah. Up by Lock and Dam 16 in Alton.
Oh, really?
Up there.
Okay.
That muddy.
So with all of that,
yeah.
How did the Monclairs disband? What happened?
You know, we replaced 2 original members. Okay. And after we replaced them, one of the original members that was left quit the group, and the people he was replaced with had families.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression about what I'm about to say. When you make a commitment to music, you better think twice about having a family. If you already got a family, you've already made your commitment. You can't take somebody away from earning a constant living for their family. I wouldn't let someone do that to me.
Right. Right.
So I knew it was time to move.
Okay.
Because I wasn't going to be discovered in St. Louis. Not to suggest people haven't, but I wasn't. So my decision was really pretty simple. It was either going to be New York or Nashville,
okay,
or LA. When I looked at the accessibility of my musical wares in the marketplace, LA offered me more than both of the other places combined.
Let's see, you and co-lead singer Kevin Sandlin, when you went to Cali, how did you end up getting signed to Capitol Records?
Prior to our signing, I was writing songs with Chuck Jackson.
Okay.
You know, Chuck Jackson
Natalie
that
Cole
produced Natalie Cole.
Yes.
Yeah. So we got some interest at Capitol.
Okay.
And before I had made the decision to do it, I thought to myself, if I was in Kevin's shoes and Kevin was working on something and it came through, would he include me? And the answer was yes, which is why he was included.
The boys from Illinois connection, huh?
It is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't.
Okay. So after, because you became known as Perry and Sandlin.
Right.
And you recorded your first solo album, Heart of the Man, which resulted into your first #1 hit, which was a remake of Aretha Franklin's Call Me. Why did you choose that song to remake, and what did Aretha think about it?
My remake of Call Me was paying Aretha back. A lot of people don't know, but on Aretha's first record on Arista, the first single was United Together, I finally found the word. That's a song that I co-wrote with Chuck. Okay. So it wasn't like I picked it out of the clear blue. This was me showing my appreciation for giving someone at the time that was not known an opportunity. Plus, the only other man that ever sang Call Me was L.J. Reynolds, and he didn't do it in the original key.
Right, exactly.
Right. So I thought, okay, well, I think I can do this in the original key. But I don't know if you'll remember him, Bruce Lundvall at the time was a vice president of Capitol. And he couldn't understand why I wanted to do it. And then he said, well, if I did let you do it, who would you have produce it? I said, George Duke.
Okay.
A couple of days later, he said, okay, you can do it. And I did it.
Okay. Okay.
George, see, I've done a lot of projects with George over the years, and a lot of different styles of music over the years with George. George and I were on the road together. I was one of the first ones to take R&B / jazz / fusion African-American musicians to Indonesia. The first time Ramsey Lewis went to Indonesia, me and him were doing the show together. Now, you would think it would have been the other way around because of all the times that he's been, all the years, all of the decades that he's been going to the Pacific Rim. He had never been to Indonesia. Plus, What's a better way to sell a ticket than have Ramsey Lewis playing piano? Or George Duke
or George.
playing piano.
Yeah. Who made the choice to put together you, Kevin Sandlin, James Ingram, and Howard Hewitt to sing background vocals on Carl Carlton's
You
Bad
want
Mama
the,
Jamma?
well, how do you want me to answer this?
Any
Do you
way
want
you
me
want.
to, do you, okay. You want the real or you want the skinny?
I want the real.
Okay. The decision was Leon Haywood's.
Okay.
Why? Because Leon Haywood was the producer of Bad Mama Jamma.
Okay.
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 Okay. I do, however, take pride in being able to say that I was the contractor of that session.
Oh, really?
I turned in the paperwork to the union.
Part.
Well, interesting story. When I got to Leon's studio, James and Howard were in the back where the parking lot was. So I park and I'm getting out. And James said, "You bring the papers?" Now, because this is a family show, I'll just say that I didn't know what papers he was referring to. Okay. So then he said, "No, man, the contracts and the W-4s and the I-9s, you got the papers." I said, "Yeah, in the trunk of the car." He said, "Get them." I go to the trunk of the car, I get the paperwork out. I hand it to him. He doesn't take it. I said, "You just told me to go get this." He said, "I'm not filling out all of that. And I'm not turning it into the union either."
What?
Right. So long story short, we do the session, but I gave them their I-9s and W-4s before I started filling out the contract. So by the time I finished filling out the contract, they were handing me their paperwork. Okay. And Leon never looked at the contract. He just signed it. He said, "You didn't overcharge me, did you?" I said, "Nope." He signed it, handed it back to me. I pulled the yellow copy of the contract off, which is the producer's. And on the way home, I turned the papers in the night drop box at the union. I get home, I'm home maybe an hour. James Ingram calls me. He said, "Yo, man, where the papers?" I said, "Why? Did you mess up something?" He said, "No." I said, "The papers at the union, Jimmy James." He said, "You went to the union after you left the studio?" I said, "Would you want to have gone in the morning? Because I could have left him with you if you just wanted to." I wasn't worried about the contract. I knew it was filled out right. But I didn't know at the time of that recording that song would be in 9 movies. 9. Yeah. God. And every time they used it in a movie, they had to pay the conversion rate from phono to film. One of the last times I saw James before he passed away was George Duke's homegoing celebration. We were outside and I was having a smoke. He walked over to me and said, "I just want to remind you, if I had known that this was going to be in 9 movies, I would have filled out the paperwork myself." I said, "Jimmy, you could have done that anyway. I wasn't bugging you about being a contractor. That's extra work for me." Though I don't mind it because I get to make a little extra money. Let me tell you something, man. That was a #1. That was Carl's either 3rd or 4th #1 record. Carl didn't barely make any money on that record because he didn't write anything. And Leon and James wrote Bad Mama Jamma. And the synthesizer solo in it is George Duke. How could it not?
Know that.
when you think about it, when you think of the elements, okay? Because all of the background singers at the time we recorded Mama Jamma, we had all had #1 records.
Right.
And we sing in background for Carl, which shows you everybody that says stars have egos ain't true. That ain't true. We just regular people. We just make music for a living.
But I'm gonna take you back.
Okay.
I'm gonna take you back in the 60s. So in the
Oh boy.
60s, yeah, the good days. Through the 60s when you were in the 70s, when you was really, doo-wop was all in,
Yeah.
and through the early 80s, that falsetto sound
Falsetto. Yeah.
was popular.
Yeah.
Why do you think it isn't heard as much these days?
Because we live in the digital age and the falsetto sound is nasally. And if you don't think so, listen to Russell Tompkins Jr. I
Okay.
ain't saying he can't sing his butt off now.
Right.
Don't get it
Right.
twisted.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying in an analog realm, you don't have parametric equalization accessibility like you do in a digital realm.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because analog is 44.1 and digital is 96K.
96. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the problem is the tonality of digital recording makes it so brittle, you got to add some warmth back. Analog, when the younger kids that are recording now, that are sampling different drums from different sets, from different artists,
Mm-hmm.
to put in their beatboxes to make a beat that encompasses three different, I mean, that's innovative.
Mm-hmm.
And that's using the technology to your advantage. See, I tell people all the time, I ain't mad at the digital generation. It's just when I was that age, we couldn't cheat. Wasn't no cheating. Can you imagine what now? If I know this is kind of an inside question, but can you imagine what would have happened if I had walked into Oliver Sane's studio with a sampling device under my arm, talking about I was going to play the drums? Are you serious? He just asked me, "What's that you carrying under your arm?" Oh, it's a Lin 9000. Not in here, it ain't.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't nothing fake about Oliver
Mm-hmm.
at all. Oliver was as true to the game as they came, sonically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have the best recording equipment, but we cut a couple of records there. And the record company we were signed to at the time accepted both records. So something was working.
Mm-hmm.
I came up musically in a difficult era because it was the most romantic era of R&B music there ever had been. I was just trying to make it clean. I didn't think that when I got old, kids would be taking my album stuff from the Monclairs and sampling it and spitting over it.
Mm-hmm.
That never crossed my mind. Why? Because the digital age hadn't come in yet. It couldn't have
Mm-hmm.
crossed my mind. Some people get in the industry just to make money. Some people get in the industry to learn more than they know before they take that journey. And along the way, they get blown away by the people they get to work with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just one of them.
Mm-hmm.
When you grow up in East Boogie, you stay humble, no matter how much success you have.
Mm-hmm. Personally, I think the industry has distorted commercial airwaves with the different music labels of neo soul, smooth jazz, hip hop slash R&B. What do you think about music labeling?
I think music is a subjective art. And as such, I think any subjective art is judged by the individual that's subjecting themselves to it. That's
That,
where it is to me.
has the digital social media age helped your career?
The digital age helps anyone's career that invests in themselves to get them on it. Why? Because every day you have the potential to become brand new to somebody that didn't know anything about you the day before. And you don't have to pay for it. And you have to understand that would have no relevancy if retail was what it used to be. But there is no retail now. Well, then why would you do something that was the way things were done 50 years ago in markets that call themselves R&B, but how much classic R&B do they play? How many of the younger groups, I'm talking about 2 generations behind me, how many of them do they play? As long as you have program directors, you're going to have people making decisions for people that have better ears than them, period. That's one of the constraints of commercial radio.
We know last year, 2020 was unreal, but are you planning any shows, tours, cruises in 2021 or 2022?
I'm thinking about waiting until 22. And the reason is there's a lot of lost cruise and airline business that they're going to want to recoup some of their losses. And before they can do that, they got to fill those planes back up, and they got to fill up those boats again. And we don't know what the next variant of this COVID thing is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just so you know, I have not had a vaccination, and I have not had a vaccination for several very valid reasons, not the least of which is I'm a heart patient. I have a defibrillator. And if I was going to get it, I'd have got it last March when I was in Indonesia and flew through Hong Kong both ways. I didn't get it then. I ain't going to get it. Ain't no shot going to change that. I remember how they tried to whitewash the Tuskegee experiments. And that ain't going to happen to me at all. No, sir. Respectfully, I ain't got no trouble with anybody that gets it. It is a safety thing. But I got a baby in my house. I got a wife here. I ain't trying to get out there and be around people I don't know what they do. Yeah. I ain't trying to do that. And I'm very blessed in that I never was lazy. So I always worked. So over the years, I kind of forgot how much they were adding into those contracts for my pension and my welfare. Well, when I was in Indonesia, my pension kicked in. So money, I just don't worry about it. And I shouldn't. You can't have faith and worry too.
What he's saying to you basically is dreaming's out of season.
Exactly. It was then, I just didn't know it. And it sung pretty good.
Yes. So I got to ask you this one, Phil.
Okay.
Describe Phil Perry.
What he is or what he tries to be. He still tries after all these years to be polite, to be a good example, and when the time suggests, to be a beast. And you don't have to take my word for it. Talk to some people who've worked with me. I mean the beast like Miles. If I had to pick somebody that I thought was beastly to emulate their behavior musically, it would be Miles. Why? Because he changed jazz. Mm-hmm. If you're going to have influence, I say that's a pretty good way to start. The day after my wife and I got married, he and Cicely had dinner for us in Malibu at Miles's house. Miles and Daddy used to box in the basement of St. Augustine's Church on Broadway, but it was Green's funeral home when you knew it.
That was part 2 of the Phil Perry interview with me and Lady Jock doing music her way. And I am G.Wiz, the time traveler, traveling at the speed of sound. We are going to be right back after this.
Okay. Hi, this is DJ Lady Jock from Music My Way on 88.1 KDHX. And I have with me today, Mr. Phil Perry. How you doing?
But you had me at hello.
I was going to ask you to keep on going. It's a pleasure. Last time, oh my God, I think the last time I saw you here, Larry Blue brought you
Oh
here.
yeah, he did that show over at the. Yeah, I remember. I remember.
Uh-huh. And then
That was a.
Twilight.
As I recall, now you correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm getting a little older now. My memory's not so good.
Okay.
But as I remember, musically, that was a pretty special night. And that might have to do with a small house, but faces that I can go back to the beginning of going to school with.
Oh, we got some roots going on here. And actually, I'm
Yes, we do.
in the area where we're going to talk about. So we'll start by saying, is it true that you were born in Springfield, Illinois, but raised in East St. Louis?
That is correct. I was adopted from St. John's Orphanage in Springfield. My parents were teachers in School District 189. I grew up in Pollocktown at the curve of 25th and Cleveland Avenue, right on the house with the big dog in the big yard.
That's what's yeah, that we go deep. I mean, I'm still in East St. Louis. I'm
okay.
Yep, not going anywhere. So when did you discover that you could sing?
Do you know where 25th and Ridge is? You remember where St. Teresa's is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I went to grade school across the street from St. Teresa's at St. Elizabeth.
Okay.
Okay. Do you remember that they had the steel stairs at St. Teresa's?
Yes.
Okay. I used to go up under there because it was a natural echo, because it was steel.
Okay.
Okay. I used to go under there and sing Johnny Mathis songs. Not necessarily because I was so enamored with him, but from a tone perspective, I was enamored with him because I heard something in him that I didn't think anybody else heard. And that was believability. Okay. He didn't do a lot of runs. He wasn't trying to be the flavor of the month, but his music gonna be played for a long, long, long time. So I would stand up there and sing, chances are, though I wear a silly grin, the moment you come in to view. And one day I did that. And when I opened my eyes back up, because I used to be scared to open my eyes when I sang, it was maybe a dozen St. Teresa girls just looking up underneath the step and watching me sing. And so when I left there, I thought to myself, wouldn't that be a nice way to make a living? Do something that you love to do instead of seeing everybody being mad about going to work. You know, every chance you get to go to work, you ain't gonna be mad at all.
No, that's right. I was trying to hear a little bit more of that Johnny Mathis song, but it's okay.
See?
I done got you started. Oh boy. I remember hearing that in my grandmother's house. I was just like, what is that? But
yeah.
that was music.
That was Johnny Mathis. If people understood at the time what Johnny Mathis represented to the African American community of the 50s and 60s and 70s, he'd be much more lauded than he is. I did a session at Capitol in Studio A. Johnny Mathis was in Studio B. I've sung background on some of his records.
Wow.
So I went down and knocked on the door, and he looked through the window. Come on in. So he asked me what I was doing. I told him. I said, you know, you one of the reasons that I got in the industry, because I figured if your voice could stop me and make me listen, and I listened good enough, I could sound like that to somebody else and make them listen. Not necessarily to say that they would like what they heard, but to just listen. He said, that's every generation's responsibility. He said, and I'm glad you sing the way you do. I said, you don't think I sing hard? He said, yeah, but I believe every word. And I can't say that anymore.
Wow. Awesome. So you're on the Baby Kids soundtrack. Now that's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Thinking with the late Renee Diggs, rest in peace, from the group Starpoint.
Right.
How did that come about?
I was signed to Capitol as a solo artist at the time. Scott Folks was an A&R director, but he did some outside things in terms of suggesting to movie companies who they could pair together for soundtracks. So it was his idea. Marcus Miller was the producer and played the bass. It was the kind of experience that if I had it to do all over again, I would have drunk more in at the time. Because I was one of those kind of cats that I was fairly well rehearsed before I got to the studio. So it didn't take me long to do what it was that they expected me to do. And I could have soaked in more magical moments had I been a little more relaxed. But I always did love, it's got to be you, oh, nobody. Always loved the songs. Always. There's a lot of movie things I've had the opportunity to do. There's a movie, Mr. Wonderful. And at the end of the movie, when they're showing the credits, they're playing a duet that I got to do with Wendy Moten called Still It's You.
Okay.
Ooh, wee.
You want to give us a little bit of that?
I wake up each morning and I try not to care. I'm going through the motions of a love affair. There's I can't remember what. I think it's on Hollywood Records. If I'm not mistaken, they're the record company that did this, that had that soundtrack. And Wendy Moten is a beast. Yikes. A lot of great singers. Anytime your ego gets out of whack, you can turn the radio on before it's playing for 6 to 10 minutes. Your ego's back in where it belongs. A lot of talented people. It ain't about the talent. It's about the journey.
I like that. You have written, produced, sang background vocals, and done features with many artists. Who are some of your favorites to work with?
Quincy, George Duke, Lee Ritenour and I have a 20+ year recording relationship. I've had the opportunity to write lyrics on instrumental music that he wrote. And those were the years that I was with the GRP family.
Okay.
Which would, in today's music, be called, GRP would be referred to as the grandfathers of smooth jazz.
Okay.
But smooth jazz is a misnomer. Smooth jazz is really instrumental R&B. And you don't have to take my word for it. Pick up a smooth jazz album, read the credits. You tell me. I've been on at least 4 Lee Ritenour records. I'm on GRP Live in Session 1 and 2 at the record plant. I did Ritenour live at the Concord. I did, you just go to YouTube and punch my name in and see how long you can just watch and hear maybe some of the same songs, but never done the same way in any performance.
Since you mentioned Lee, is that you on that song? And I love that song. I think it's from the 80s. Is it you? You.
Yeah, I sang that with Lee. I didn't record it. That's Eric Tagg.
Okay.
And he co-wrote the song.
Okay.
Him, Bill Champlin, and Lee.
Okay.
But believe me, I sang with Lee for a long, long time. So I know all about someone's just outside, knocking at my door. A stranger, somebody unknown.
Yes, man. Love that song.
Got much respect for him.
Okay.
And he sings in Portuguese. If you happen to be moved by Portuguese words being sung, like you're in the room, Eric Tagg.
Wow.
Eric Tagg got something for you.
Okay. I'm gonna have to look up some Eric Tagg.
He has there's a song, April as miles effetto paavaso. And I think it's an Yvonne Lynn song, if you want to hear the original version. But Eric Tagg is like Michael McDonald or Bobby Caldwell. He's as soulful a white boy as you're gonna ever hear in your life.
No, some two good ones right there you just named.
James and Michael McDonald was doing a tour after Yamo Be There. They was in Houston, where Larry Blue was. You know Larry, so he found his way backstage, and they was walking together. So he stopped and introduced himself, and they was talking about the show that was coming up, and he said, "I got a homeboy out there in LA. I wonder how he's doing. His name is Phil Perry." He told me, he said, Michael looked at James, and James looked back at him, and James got right up in my ear and said, "Phil Perry's the badass of MF in LA."
And it was history from there, wasn't it?
No, I was just surprised that Jimmy would say that.
Oh, okay.
No, and it's not because we ever had any trouble. It's that he had already proven his worth with Quincy. He didn't have to give me no play. That was a righteous move on his part. And I thank him for it. Even though he's gone, he's still here. Long as I got a memory, he's still around.
Yes, sir. And at what point did you start to feature your wife and lead and background contributions?
Lily's on Call Me.
Ooh.
She's on background. She's in the background on Call Me. We did do Not Disturb because I would rather pay her than somebody else. Plus, she's a very accomplished singer. She was in the touring company of the Wiz. She's recorded with Donny Hathaway.
Wow.
Who got her in the Union.
Wow.
You dig. What to Wazuri, use Afro Sheen. That's Lily.
Oh.
Go Spuds, go.
Commercial.
Spuds McKenzie.
Wow.
Go Spuds, go. Lily doing that too. Lily can blow.
Awesome.
It's not that I don't love her, and I wouldn't have used her anyway, but she can blow.
Right. Okay. Miss Lily Perry. All right. So you have recorded several albums, CDs, some in the studio, some live, personal.
Yep.
What type of recording do you prefer to do and why?
Well, it's hard to say what my preference of the two would be because the discipline changes based on what you're recording. In other words, if it's a studio album, you got to approach it like that. You have to approach vocals on a studio album a different way than you approach vocals on a live recording. And the only reason I can tell you that that's the way I compartmentalized it, is if I'm not singing to move the audience, ain't nobody gonna listen to that DVD. So I kind of, if I were being honest, I'd have to tell you that I just didn't pay the cameras any attention. Now, in post-production, I had work to do because it was live. But I had the blessing of working with good engineers in my career. And once I explained to them how I heard what I needed to do, I left it up to them to match the ambience of the interior of the room that we were in at the time.
All right, my last question for you is, what do you think about today's R&B music?
I think it's very musical in its own way, but it's not melodic. It's very rhythmic. And y'all believe in listening to distortion. And you know that that's true because you play it. And when you have those headphones on and 600 cycles from that bass drum goes in those headphones, you hear that rattle, don't you?
Yep.
Okay. Well, now, let me help put this in perspective so that you understand where I'm coming from. Everything I recorded in the Monclairs was in analog. Everything since has been digital. All I was trying to do with the Monclairs was make it as clean as digital makes it now. But I didn't have the facilitation to do it. What studio back there was I going to use to take Oliver Sane's 2-inch masters and mix it down on anything but an analog tape? Now, keep in mind the 2-inch master, you got to play that and transfer that to the 2-track, okay? And then you got to press it to vinyl. Now, I know you love vinyl, and you're supposed to. But from a recording perspective, the cleaner you start, the cleaner it ends up.
Wow, that pretty much sums it up right there on my part of the show. So, Mr. Phil, I want to thank you.
I can't wait to get the chance to do this again.
Yeah, we got to get you back here in St. Louis. No doubt on that. Got to get you back here. We got to get you back home. Where it all.
I can take no responsibility for how I sound because this microphone is in a computer. I did my first record when I was 16 years old. Now just consider that for a minute. That means for over 50 years, I've gotten the opportunity to do what I love to do. I love my wife. I love my kids. I love my grandkids. I love none of them like I love music. And I'd be lying if I said I did. Music has always been there. Music is my escape. When I want to tune out everybody or tune out the world, so to speak, I just go to the piano and start playing something. If I hear a melody, I hum it. If I like it, I remember it. If I don't, I don't. The songs that are supposed to be, they won't let you rest. Dreaming's Out of Season, as silly a song as it was, did not let me rest until I was finished writing it. Prelude to a Heartbreak, same way, was not relenting at all until I was finished. Make Up for Lost Time. Yeah. Jerry Stickle and Bobby Patterson on Jewel Paula. Can't think of the old guy's name. He's gone now. He's probably been gone 15, 20 years. Stan Lewis. His brother Ronnie used to run Jewel Paula down in Shreveport. I think they might have sold it to one of the Japanese companies. Now I know you're both going to crack on me about this, but you know I don't have a copy of a Monclairs record.
I think you told me that before. And I was like, what? Because I think Kevin told me the same thing. I'm like, huh? What?
That is it. That's it. That is true.
Do you have a copy of anything?
I got some of the things that I was a part of once I got to California.
Okay.
But not the group stuff.
Mm.
See, since music has always been my escape, that music that I recorded with the group, that's group music. And it's going to always be that. And even though I wrote it, it's much different than the music that I compose now. Y'all have a good evening. I'm going to get up out of here, okay?
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate it.
Okay.